right. Another round of applause, please, for our filmmaker. All right, thank you so much. I'm a little hard to see, but I know you're all out there, so thank you all for sticking with us, and you'll be here for another 40 minutes or so. We'll have about 30 minutes of discussion, and then we'll open up the floor for question and answer. So let me begin by introducing our guest for the evening to you. Asaf Galay is an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose work investigates Jewish creativity, popular culture, literature, and the contribution of Jewish artists to American history. Approximately 3 weeks ago, as I mentioned, his multi-part film, Cartooning America, which has seen the first episode, won first prize at the Library of Congress Lavine Ken Burns Prize, and was supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Going a little bit further back, in 2022, his film, The Adventures of Saul Bellow, screened on the PBS American Masters series and was a finalist for the Library of Congress Lavine Ken Burns Prize for Film, again, supported by the National Endowment for the Humanities. Adventures screened in 50 film festivals worldwide, and won multiple film festival awards. His other films include a documentary exploring the magic literature and complex life of Isaac Bashevis Singer, a movie about a celebrated Hasidic pop star, Lipa Schmelzer, and a documentary of a queer Swedish-Jewish musical diva. Film is titled Army of Lovers in the Holy Land. He is working on gutter art, illuminating American comic art history. In addition, when he doesn't sleep apparently, in addition to his acclaimed film and television career, Mr. Galay is a museum curator at ANU, the Museum for the Jewish People in Tel Aviv. He's a head curator of exhibits on Bob Dylan, Forever Young, Jewish Humor, Laughing at History, and Jewish Fashion Designers, entitled Dreamweavers. He's a curator of an exhibit, Amy Winehouse, A Family Portrait. I'd love to have seen that one. In the center here is Katherine Malone-France, who is a president and CEO of the Better Angel Society, the only national nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting excellence in American history documentaries. Her entire career has focused on supporting meaningful engagement with American history through historic places, archival research, and the arts, where she previously served as a chief preservation officer and the senior vice president for historic sites at the National Trust for Historic Preservation. The work continues at the Better Angel Society, where she works with a dedicated board and staff, outstanding partners to support outstanding documentaries on public media, to create community around documentaries that explore our full shared history, and build the next generations of American history documentarians to tell the stories that are meaningful to them in their voices. So we're going to touch upon a range of topics. This is a scripted, unscripted discussion. And what we're going to try to do is to talk about the creative impulses behind filmmaking, technical other challenges encountered in the course of making a film, the aims and goals of the Better Angel Society, and Ken Burns and the Lavines in providing support to filmmakers, and of course, a particular interest to those of us who are in this building on the Capitol Hill campus and out at the National Audiovisual Conservation Center, how the use of the library's historical film collections in this and other productions helps advance the cause of documentary filmmaking. So I'll begin first, sort of a broad question, maybe overbroad, but what drew you, Asaf, to making a film about the Fleischer brothers and early animation? And when did you come to realize it was a story that could be told and ought to be told about them?
When I was a child, when I grew up, I like to watch the cartoons, and like every child in the world, I watched Disney, but I didn't feel very related to the blonde, masculine character. And then I remember that when I was around 7 or 8 years old, for me, I saw Popeye and I fall in love. I was saying, wow, this is amazing. This is rough. He's mumbling. He's funny. And since there, I was stuck with Popeye. Sometimes I think that I'm a kind of a Popeye. I like the Fleischer-style cartoons compared to the Disney. This is immigrants. This is an outsider look about American life. This is funny. This is humor. And later in my career, I said I want to go and investigate this story deeper and deeper. This is how this project started in my mind. I will just give you a hint how much time it takes to make a film. I think that the first email that I sent about this project to the Fleischer family was in the 2013. I got first the development grant for this in 2017 from the National Endowment for Humanities. They are the big supporter for my film. I really thank you for this. And then I got later in 2019 the production grant, and then I started, and then COVID came, and then a lot of challenges came through this documentary until it came to the rough cut stage. That it doesn't mean that it's the final stage still.
Yes, let's make sure we emphasize that part of it. How are the library's historical collections? I noticed part of the rough cut is that you see all the time code on all the various pieces of footage from lots of different archives. But in particular, how do library's film collection help you in sort of making this production move it forward?
The Library of Congress collection, it's amazing. It's an amazing place as a filmmaker. You know, a lot of times as a filmmaker, people come to me and tell me, I have a great story to tell you. You should do a movie about the history of the gefilte fish. Then I ask them how I can do it. I don't have visual. So for me, the Library of Congress, it's the place where I find stories. I have this kind of habit. I have good family here in DC. They are here. I come here every Passover, and I come to the Library of Congress and looking for stories.
Yeah.
And I have many stories that I want still to do from the Library of Congress. But the latest, the coming up project that I'm going to do, it's the history of comics. And it came since I was here 5 years ago. I met the librarian Georgia Higley. I hope I pronounce her family name good. And she showed me the amazing collection here of comics. And I said, wow, I must make a film about here. And now I'm starting to make it.
Well, on that note, let me just say parenthetically that in 2021 and 2022, just a piece of information for you folks, there were dozens of research requests to colleagues in the National Audiovisual Conservation Center out in Culpeper, Virginia, where our film collections are preserved and housed in state-of-the-art facilities. And the footage and recorded sound material for use in feature films, documentaries, and television series were requested on the following topics. And it's a ridiculously long list. I'll give you some of the topics. Gefilte fish is not on this list, however, but it should be. Here's a sampling. Early 1900s bubonic plague in San Francisco, the history of Johnson Publishing, the history of Shanghai, the history of Spain in the 20th century, the phenomenon of sound, U.S. presidents, not a small topic, women's reproductive rights in Chicago in the 1960s, Zora Neale Hurston, the history of DC Comics, history of special effects for Disney. So I think in the conversation you said you had 10 ideas. I don't know if these are on that list or not, but you could add to it at some point. Katherine, I want to turn to you simply because it's the notion of what of Asaf's sort of vision about films is, it'd be interesting. I'll preface this by asking you to talk to the audience, particularly informing filmmakers who want to learn more about the Lavine Burns Prize for Film. What led you to bring that opportunity into being? In other words, what's the story behind the prize, your birth story, if I will?
Sure. Well, thank you for asking, and thank you to the Library of Congress for having us here tonight. We were here about a month ago to award Asaf this prize here in this room, and we're just so grateful for this partnership with the Library of Congress. We all have so much respect for Dr. Hayden, the Librarian of Congress, but also just love working with the whole team here. So thank you for that. You know, I think the story of the Ken Burns Lavine Prize, the Library of Congress Ken Burns Lavine Prize for Film, is a really important one because it gets at I think the process of film, it was, and I think this was the sort of visionary nature of the people who were putting it together, it was really intended to come in at a critical moment in the process of a film, a moment when it's possible for a film to stop, the moment when it is a rough cut and all of that archival footage hasn't been purchased yet. Not all archival footage costs money, but a lot of it does, and
just
it's
got
really
a
expensive.
Yes, I just got a quote from a big company for $30,000 for 20 seconds.
Thank you for, no, I mean, that's it, $30,000 for 20 seconds, right? That's a really important thing to realize about this process. And I think that Ken Burns and the Lavines and the library and the Better Angels Society all came together and saw that there's this moment in a rough cut when a film can stop. And they wanted to do something to help continue a film's momentum, to keep it from getting stopped. And that's a point at which a film and a filmmaker needs resources. Right. So that was the idea, that filmmakers would submit their rough cuts, painful as that is for a filmmaker to put a rough cut out into the world. They would submit their rough cuts, and then there would be a substantial cash prize for the very best of those to help it get over that last hurdle.
Can I add for this? Right now, I'm an old-style documentary filmmaker. I work with a team, but you can see that the next generation, they can do filming. They are really DIY. They are filming, they are editing, they are directing, narration, everything. But the only thing that still is missing to finish their film is their archive. Mm-hmm. And this will not change in the world of documentary. The cost of making this film will be very less. Already, you can do a lot of graphic. It's so much less expensive than to make a film like 30 years ago when Ken Burns started his career. But to purchase the archive, the costs just go up higher and higher. And this is the thing that it's the changing between a finished film and not finished film.
Well, and I think that's the other thing that the library, that all the people involved in this share, is that idea of activating archival material, right? And really bringing it, using it to find the stories, as Asaf just described, but then activating it for the public. Right. And I think that's a really exciting thing about this award.
So let me dig in on that a little bit. Is that sort of the impetus behind this, behind the society's focus on documentary films? Is there a specific thing about documentary that you want to say?
Sure. Well, I think that it is striking to me that when the American Historical Association asked Americans how they learn about their history, the number one answer by 69% of Americans was documentary films. Mm. I mean, it's documentary films in the hands of filmmakers like Asaf are incredibly important tools for unearthing those stories out of our collective memory and then sharing them widely with the American public, with all of us. And it's in that sharing that I think we have something really remarkable. It's a way that we all sort of participate in, not just learning about, but really the way a film lets you explore a story.
For me, historical documentary filmmaking, if I compare it all the film business, all the filmmaker business to sports, making a fiction film, it's like NFL, it's big team, it's shiny, a lot of money, and making commercial, this is fast, this is 24 seconds for a play, and you need to sell. Making a documentary film, it's like water polo. It's the hardest athletic, as you know, to do, but you don't see it. Everything is beneath the water. It's so deep. It's really hard, And making a good film, a historical documentary film, it's the interviews. It's not interview. It's a major part of it, but the more challenging and hard aspect, it's the archive. And the archive are the ones changing if the film is excellent or it's just talking heads with that becoming boring in some. So it's so hard to know that the archive are so important to the documentary historical films.
So I want to make sure that while the Library of Congress archives are some of the premier collections in the world, what other archives did you go into for this to draw upon the material so far in this film?
Wow, this is a list that's so long, from private archive, from Library of Congress, archives in New York Historical Society, the Academy of so many, I think at least 40 archives.
So let me turn back to this film for a second. One of the things I wanted to emphasize again is that One of the things I want to emphasize again is that this is a multi-part series, and I want to ask you a question about that in terms of Better Angels and how this works in the framework of Better Angels. But what can we expect in the next? How many? 6 episodes, correct? 6, okay.
So each episode is very short. It's 40 minutes. I like short things. I think that it's better in our days. The next episode is telling more about the development of the music, coming out the music in the Fleischer studio. The 3rd episode is about their character Betty Boop. The 4th episode is about Popeye. The 5th episode about their first feature, Gulliver. And the last episode is the last Superman and the ending of the studio. So each one is standing alone. And
okay.
Yes.
So that was a question. So are these meant to be watched sequentially, like, I don't know, Game of Thrones or something, or are they not a documentary, by the way. Sorry, I know. Sorry.
Yes, I don't know. It's always, each project I'm starting to think what is the right length for it, what is the right structure for telling. Sometimes I start a project and I say it's not good enough to make a film from it. Maybe I need to do an exhibit. Maybe I make a fiction of it. So it really depends.
Fascinating. So that was a question for you, Katherine, because is this Better Angel Society even in short existence?
Sure.
You've sort of looked at sort of long form films and single episodic films, right?
Well, in the case of the prize for film, Cartooning America is the first multi-episode documentary that has received the prize. So we're in our 6th year, and this is the first multi-episode doc. Now, having said that, we support, through other mechanisms, lots of multi-episode docs on public media and other places. But this one is... Asaf knows this because I've said it to him several times. One of the many things that I love about Cartooning America is that each episode is also a sort of standalone story. I think that really speaks to his craft as a storyteller, that each one leaves you wanting to see more, but at the same time it is its own story. I am a large fan of episode 4, which is the Popeye episode. So when this makes it to whatever broadcast or streaming service it's going to, I would say look for episode 4.
So to that extent, does the prize or other mechanisms that the Better Angel Society has, how do you support the sort of distribution of the films?
Well, that is the question, isn't it? I mean, that is the question for every filmmaker.
Right.
Once they get past the rough cut hurdle, is how does the film get seen? And I'm not a filmmaker, but I talk to a lot of them, and it's my understanding that it is a very challenging time to get distribution. And so again, we want to, the purpose of the prize is to get them over that hurdle, but we are also really interested in then what happens next to those films. And we try to be as supportive as we can be in making industry connections, making additional fundraising connections, promoting the films in general, trying to, if we're involved in a film festival, trying to take the films there. We're going to be doing a fundraiser next week for a wonderful film called The Disappearance of Miss Scott that was the runner-up last year. So any sort of exposure we can continue to bring to these films is really exciting to us.
Asaf, how does the prize work for you? I mean, it may be too early days yet, but do you think that there's appreciable interest now that you've gotten it out there into public view like that? From distributors, I mean.
I think that the prize gave such a great recognition for this project. Right now, we have much more enthusiastic from several distribution, several people. Right now, there is like approval that Canberra said, this is a great project, you should watch it. And now people are watching it because before that, okay, it's a film about cartoons, Betty Boop, it's not a heist, it's not a crime doco, there is nothing suspicious here. Why to watch it? It's not like the loud movies that they are looking for, but right now people say, it's worth us to watch it.
So turning back to the film, the one thing which struck me, I mean, I love cartoons as much as anybody else. I grew up watching cartoons since I came to this country. But I found more and more myself just wanting to hear about the Fleischer story and the kind of the family, and that word that I think Dave Fleischer says, that was the intrigue, right? And I don't want to presume, but I assume that the trajectory is not a happy one for the Fleischers in terms of how it all ends up for their interpersonal relationship.
Yeah, it's a well-known fact that the Fleischer, in 1942, the company crashed, and since 1942, there was one big company, Disney. By the way, Walt Disney had his brother Roy Disney, so it was also a family company. Many people don't know, so they were dominating this market until the last 30 years that starting again cartoon for adults audience like the Fleischer, and then a lot of great animators rediscovered the Fleischer as their inspiration for new kind of animation.
Have you yourself worked in animation? Is that something that you aspire to doing?
I will tell you, I make a film about people that I admire and I want to do. I wish I could be a writer, so I make a film about writer, but I don't have the wheel of power. I wish that I could be animator doing again and again drawing, but I'm too moving. I can't do it, so I admire these people. So this is why I come and do the film about it, but I'm not an animator and not a writer and not a musician. I wish I could be.
So this curious, as you were going through the archives, in particular, perhaps as doing the research, can you tell us some stories about some aha moments that you had when you were doing your research and the work of this? Like something that you came across which just went, wow, that just took the top of my head off.
So this film is, I tried a lot to make parallels between the Fleischer cartoons and the society and the life that were surrounding them. And a great moment in this film that I loved, I showed it 1 month ago, it's the recollection of Dave's memoir when he grew up in the ghetto, in the tough neighborhoods in New York, and it was inspired him to make Popeye, the humor of Popeye. And So I got all these great cartoons of Popeye, but I was looking for footage that will show, tough neighborhoods, gangs fight, kids in the streets. And then I found here in the Library of Congress amazing documentary footage. It's called In the Streets. It made by a great filmmaker. Her name was Helen Levitt. It's amazing. You can watch it in the Library of Congress website, and it catches the different ethnicity of kids fighting and the games, and you can see a little bit gangster people, and it was like a perfect match to the Popeye film. I love this.
I think Asaf's story captures another thing that's so important to us about the prize is really being able to sort of pull back the curtain a little bit on all of the different disciplines that a filmmaker like Asaf commands, right? He is an artist and a storyteller and a technician and a historian and a skilled researcher. And I think one of the things that really stands out, and a writer, right? One of the things that really stands out about this film in particular is how evident that craft is and how you see the skill with which Asaf weaves something like that footage with the Popeye and does it in a way that illuminates a larger truth about our history. And it's really a remarkable thing to see. And we really want people to understand what it is that these filmmakers do and how extraordinary it is.
I think that what you describe, it's really like I said, it's like a water polo. Everything is behind the water, all the things. You don't watch it. You watch, when you watch a film, you see this kind of archive thing, but there is so many process behind it, go deeper and deeper in research, and the archive are the jewels, are the treasure for for historical documentary. I made in my career, I made not just historical documentary. I made like documentary, but for other people, it's so much easier. I finished film in 9 months.
Wow. Yeah. And this you started this 2013, did I get that?
This film I started to film on 2019.
Right, oh, right, that's right, before the pandemic.
Yes.
Okay. That's amazing. So talk a little bit more about the other technical challenges. I mean, finding the footage is one thing to match. I mean, that's obviously you're trying to match scenes or match sort of images. What else sort of is a challenge in this kind of process?
It's not just finding the footage, finding interesting footage, but more challenging, it's in the end, it's to catch the audience, always to catch the storytelling, to catch the feelings, and not to just give facts, or it's not a wiki docu, I called it. People that give you just facts in document.
Right.
You're trying to catch the relationship, the emotional, the human. This is what makes the films good, and this is what drives a film. So you don't, and you don't have the freedom of a book. In a book, you can write whatever you want. You can do point, and you can use commas. In film, you don't have it. You are much more, have less things, and a photo can give you a point.
Yeah. No, I was struck by something as the structure of the film goes, and you're talking about cartoons not merely as entertainment, but having sort of a wider resonance with wider society and the historical aspect of it. And I thought that interleaving of history and and what was contemporary at that moment with the society was fascinating. And it's exactly the opposite of sort of standard history writing, right? I mean, the anthropologist Eric Wolf said, the reason history books are so bad is because it's just one damn thing after the other, right? But you seem to make that jump between all those different spaces and times and and individual personal accounts with the larger sort of framework of what's going on in developing America at that time, right?
Yes. As you hear, I'm not American. I live in United States, but I didn't know most of the history, and through this film, I learned more about the cinema business, about Hays Code, about the World War II and the U.S. And the American policy. I learned so much about the brighter history, the history of so many things are coming in each small family's history. So many things are connected to the big history.
Yeah.
I think one of the other things about this film that's so remarkable is that history of technology that Asaf captures, and how, like the rotoscope, that idea, right, is so, well, of course cartoons match music. Like that, there was a time that didn't exist. I don't know. I thought that you captured the story of how that technology was developed, the human dynamics in it, but also the patent application, right? The drawings, what goes into a patent application that you have to be able to prove that it works. I mean, I thought the sort of technology history.
Yes, the era of invention is in the start of the 1920s. I didn't know about it. I thought that it was like this. I didn't know that there was so many inventions coming in the 20s, in the early 20s.
I love that part, but I also love, and I wonder if you could just briefly tell, just in 2 seconds, the story of Cab Calloway.
Oh, wow.
And the animal that he becomes.
Sounds like a great story.
Cab Calloway. So I knew a little bit about him from the Blues Brother, but I didn't know that he was like the biggest star in the 30s. He was like Beyonce, someone like this in the 30s. He was amazing. There was movies with him. There is so many things. And the Fleischer were starting to do like clips with musicians, especially with African-American jazz musician in New York. They were collaborating because they were also working with Paramount. It was a syndicate thing, and Cab Calloway was in a contract with Paramount, and they took him and made like the first video clips with him. Oh, wow. This is like MTV before it was MTV, and it's amazing. And the best one, it's the rotoscoping Calloway. I forgot the name of this creature. Lion, what? I forgot. You can watch it, and you can watch him dance. He has his special move dance for Michael Jackson. It's amazing, the clips that they were doing with him.
And they turn him into a walrus.
A walrus, yes.
So there is a giant dancing walrus that has all the moves of Cab Calloway. Yeah. And it's incredible.
Yes.
Note to self, check out the archives for this footage, I think. So, thank you. We've got just a few minutes left to, before we have to wrap up here. And I wanted to ask Katherine particularly, how can people get involved in the work of the Better Angels Society?
Yeah.
And especially for filmmakers, if you're out there, raise your hands. There you go. How can they engage with the prize for film?
Sure. The easiest thing to do is go to our website, betterangelsociety.org, and sign up for updates. That'll let you know, or the filmmakers in your lives will let you know when we open the application process, which will be early 2025. It'll let you know how you can come to see the prize for film, how you can join us for virtual events all year round. The other thing that we do that Asaf will be participating in is we connect filmmakers like Asaf with students, junior high and high school students who are making outstanding documentaries. And so we really believe in that kind of mentorship between generations of filmmakers. So join us. It's easy to join us, and if you believe in the power of historical documentaries, you're already one of us. So join.
Great. Maybe we could bring the lights up and see if we have any questions from the audience, if there are mics out there to be had. I will note again that you're here live at the library. It's been a very special evening here with a filmmaker. And raise your hands if you have a question, wait for the microphone. Thank you.
So I wanted to ask, with the interviews with the animators, that was all part of the Library of Congress's footage as well, or did you orchestrate that, I presume?
No, in the Library of Congress, I found a lot of charts and drawings that the Fleischer did. There is a great collection here of the chart. The movies, I found them on YouTube. All of the Fleischer cartoons are on YouTube. You can watch it. But here I found the drawings, the behind scene of the Fleischer studios.
Right, so concerning the interviews with those animators that were talking about the Fleischer brothers, that's something that you filmed with?
Yes, I filmed.
That's what
I filmed them.
Yeah.
So I didn't, yes.
Nice. Well, it's pretty remarkable that you were able to get a hold of some of those famous animators, like Brad Bird, for example. Very impressive.
Thank you. I think, by the way, animators are very modest people because they're working. You are meeting people like Brad Bird or Peter Ramsey or Henry Selick, and they're really down to earth.
It's always good to
meet total. I interview in my life pop stars. I interview actors, famous film directors. Actors are so nice, are so down to animators are so nice, are so down to earth.
Yeah, no, it's always very refreshing to have them be down to earth. Yeah. So, but I do stop motion, so this was very inspiring.
Thank you. The question there?
I wonder, does the family still own the rights to any of those characters? Betty Boop and Popeye, are the heirs own the rights, or was that sold off during their demise in 1940s?
It's a complicated story. It's between the family and Paramount, and a lot of them already are more than 90 years are public domain.
Yeah.
But it's a complicated story.
Okay, thank you.
Do I see a hand? Do I see a hand out there? Going once, going twice? Yes, thank you.
Okay. Hi, I'm a grad student here at Catholic University. I work in the special collections and the archives. And I guess I've never encountered what film archiving is like yet. So I'm interested in what it means for purchasing the archive for a film like this, because I mean, in my experience, we charge people per scans, and even that is quite expensive. So I am not surprised by the number that you threw out for what it costs for purchasing certain, even 20 seconds. I mean, I'm sure that's an enormous price tag, but I just am curious as to really what it means to purchase from an archive.
Well, it's a big question. There is so many archive, like Getty Images. It's $500 for a picture. If you want the best rights for all over the world, most of the archives charge you $1,000 for 30 seconds. It's very expensive. And they are not going to take down the rates. This is how the big archives are making their money, and it's very expensive. And there is great places like Library of Congress and NAWA that it's for free.
Yeah.
But sometimes there is things that are in the private hands of archives.
So the Library of Congress doesn't charge $30,000 a second or whatever, right? We're a public domain archive. We're taxpayer funded. We will charge you how much it costs to, say, maybe make a scan, like a 4K scan or something like that. We don't hold copyright on the material that we have in our archives. So if there are licensing fees to be had, generally that's a negotiation between the filmmaker and the person who holds a copyright, or the estate for that matter. That, I think, is a crucial difference between us and somebody like, say, NBC or whomever else you might want to go to, because they're for profit, and that's what they do. We're here for the public trust. Our archival collections are supposed to endure for the life of the Republic, plus 500 years. So if you get that far down the line, come back and see us. We'll be able to get you your footage. Really, yeah.
So there's no copyrights because it's like a
We don't hold a copyright to those films. There are copyrights on the film, but they're held by somebody else, like the filmmaker.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate the answers.
And if you want to know more about that, you can direct that question to askalibrarian@loc.gov, and we'll put you in touch with the reference librarian in any division that holds those materials, and they can answer those questions in depth. And we'd welcome our colleagues in the field to come and talk to us.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. All right, I think we have come to the end of our time. Not that we've exhausted this topic by any stretch of the imagination. I would like to say that the next 6 episodes or whatever that Asaf is doing will be screened here at the library, but that will be a lie, because Michelle will kill me, and so will Mary Eno, if I make that promise. However, do look for it at some point soon. Closing remarks from the two of you, please. This is whatever you can leave us with.
So for each filmmaker, I really recommend to come to look for stories that are coming from the visual and the archive from the Library of Congress. You know, a lot of time you think, okay, I have a great idea, I will make a film. I said about gefilte fish, I know about whatever. It's not a good way to start a film. It's better to go to the archive and find your story, find your treasures.
Well, and I'll just build on that and say, the reason that Better Angels exists, the reason that American history documentaries, I think, are so important is we need all the stories we can get, right? We need to continue to excavate the stories, as Asaf has done, and then weave these pieces together into something that reminds us that there are so many things we have in common. Film and the work of filmmakers like Asaf is just an incredibly powerful tool in strengthening our country.
Thank you. So final note is events like this don't run on their own. They take a lot of people power, and those folks standing right back there deserve your applause. So let's please. And a hand for yourselves. Thank you all for coming and supporting the work of Asaf Galay, the Better Angels Society, and your library, the National Library, the Library of Congress. Thank you. Have a good night, and see you back here soon. Okay.
Thank you.